Jeffrey, so glad to have you on here, sir. Absolute pleasure. This is the last podcast of the year
Oh
that we're
shit.
doing now, and I appreciate you coming here to round it out with me. Thank you.
Yeah, pressure's on, I guess.
Yeah,
But
and I think that'll about do it. I think we're kind of out of time here, but thank you so much for coming on. Really, really good to have you on.
to be honest, any longer with me, and you're gonna be like, the hell is going on here? So yeah, that'll do. And good to see you.
Yeah,
And
likewise. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we covered some good topics. Yeah.
no, I really appreciate you having me, and nice to be able to connect. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. What kind of got you interested in music? Just to start it right off.
It's a good question. There was a very clear moment for me. I would say like eighth to ninth grade. I was the type of kid who just like tried a lot of things, including, sports and band and, so on and so forth. And there was just like this very clear moment in high school where I think I got like injured pretty badly like the first day of like high school baseball practice, and I was just like fuck that. And all my all my friends were starting to pick up guitars and basses or start to play drums like around the same time. A lot of us had even like the same guitar teacher, and I was just very fortunate that even in the sleepy suburbs of New Jersey where I grew up, that there was like enough kids forming bands, even in my town and surrounding towns, to even warrant like my high school having a battle of the bands. Or like there was this really weird place right across the street from our high school that was literally next to the police station called the Outhouse. And they would let all these like young punk whatever kids that just wanted to scream their heads off play from probably I don't know, it was weird. It was like I was fortunate that I had a support system, meaning my parents and my family encouraging me to start, on that path early, and that I had a lot of friends tapping into that. And also just that, like I said, that there were like, people, older people around me that were like welcoming, that, and just all the, going to shows at church basements and temples, and like it's like why were they letting it's like, yeah, come play screamo music at 11 a.m. at the synagogue or something,
That's the time to do it. That's the time and the
yeah,
place to do something, and that's the time and the
yeah,
place. Yeah.
yeah. But I suppose my you know kind of have always followed my own path in regards to, like, I suppose, like, taste, always music on in the house growing up. But in regards to like me playing music or writing my own songs, I would say that like I had a nice foundation to kind of build off of.
Very good. Reaching back here for a minute, what was the injury that you said, fuck baseball?
It was like a bad hop to the eye. I remember my
Ooh.
dad being like, "Oh, just like maybe don't get hurt on like the first day, and then it happened. And I like wasn't, I'm not a very competitive person, so my participation, at least in sports, was kind of like, if we win, cool. Like if not, that's fine too. I didn't. So I think like there was like an opportunity, there was like a lane open for me to like grab on to something that made more sense for just like who I was and where I was at and what I was interested in. And I mean, initially, I think in what, elementary or, yeah, or middle school, I like played, alto sax for a while. And it's funny, like looking back, it's definitely something I wish I would have stuck with. But yeah, it was pretty just like a normal thing. I'm like, oh, my buddies are forming bands. I guess I gotta like have an electric guitar. So yeah, that's kind of where it started.
Did you take to it immediately? Was it something that you're like, yes, this is what I need to do?
I did, and I think about this often. Like my drummer lived up the street from me, bass player lived not far either, and like Wednesdays after school, bus home, grabbed a guitar, like basically sprinting up to his house. You know, it was like it was you talk about like, oh, what motivates a young person or whatever. It's like it was that. I wanted nothing else to do but that. And I also think about that, like the really awful first band ever that I was in was also the one of the first like places that I experienced like failure, like not making it into the even like the through like the first round of like the battle of the bands, competition. I was just like devastated, but I think it was kind of like that stuff. And I remember like friends starting other bands and stuff like that. And I think I just, again, I wasn't competitive, but I knew this was something I had in me and was starting to like watch older kids do it. And it just made a lot of sense. And I remember even then thinking there was kind of no cooler feeling than finishing a song. Like we did that. It was miraculous then. It's miraculous that it ever happens now or has continued to happen for me. And so I think that's yeah, it's just yeah, it made sense right away, I think.
Who were some of your earliest influences within music? Who were you looking towards during those days?
I
Song.
mean like I mean like really early days of being in bands, I was like in Northeast New Jersey. It was like the height of, pop punk and emo and hardcore and like all of that. So it was a lot of that was like
Good stuff. A lot of good stuff.
ultimately a lot of quality music.
Still holds
But
up. Sure.
yeah, yeah. So I kind of like came up in that universe. And it's funny because I feel like I have an older brother who, him in high school, he would like collect, like online early versions of like online, trading like live dead, tapes and CDs and like all the stuff that now I'm like, oh, where are those binders? And like, where is that music? All this stuff that I'm so into now. But I think it was just a little bit of the like kind of wanting to like do my own thing. And I think I came around to all of more of the whatever classic rock, psychedelic music, except so on and so forth, just later and on my own path as my interest and sense of self and just what I wanted to do with music and songs kind of changed. Like I do remember kind of like in college, just, I spent a lot of time by myself, just going to the library, taking out CDs and DVDs, getting really high and taking out CDs and DVDs. That was like my thing. And I remember, taking out like this like live, I think Neil Young like live at Massey Hall, just stuff like that. I just started to be like, I still had so many friends that were playing this kind of, I guess, more louder, abrasive music, but I found myself kind of taking one, further and further steps away from that. So again, just all part of, I think, me kind of just like, uh, I suppose, just trudging my own path.
Right. And
Yeah,
subsequently, your brother got into the emo stuff later on as well, correct? You guys kind of swapped there.
that would be incredible. I think somehow, I don't know. I think yeah, he's just a deep fish guy. He stayed true. I lost myself, and he's really managed to stay true. But that's hysterical to think about. Actually, if he somehow went that way. Uh,
We sent him an invitation to come in, and I think he's running a little bit late, but yeah, we'll check with him later on.
I
Um,
always I always joke with like, you know putting on like loud or heavy music as a kid. Your parents are telling you like, turn that shit down, and but like But if it was ska music, that was like the one thing where my dad could be like, "Oh, well, there's horns. I get this. It's okay." You know, like somehow like ska was like the like okay thing to have on
I think that's the
around
rule
around
now.
family.
I think that's still
I think it's
prevalent.
family friendly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Whatever wave you're on, fourth wave even. I mean, that's probably happening now as we
I'm
speak.
always I'm always curious. I mean, I'm making the assumption that Orange County, a lot of similar things were happening in regards to, like, I don't know how old you are, but like in regards to like punk and pop punk and that being like a very popular sound.
Yeah, that was really prevalent when I was a
Yeah,
young kid. It's
yeah,
that was I mean, and it's still people that were really into it are still into it now, and that's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
I like it. I like that people are still liking what they like.
Yep. I mean, there it is kind of impressive though, like the staying power of those genres. It's like, it just in that like a lot of those bands are like, oh, you would like assume like those bands like don't exist anymore. It's like, no, they still do, so and like the audience hasn't changed. They've just gotten older, kind of deal.
Do you feel like
Um
that's the same kind of sentiment that the older Deadheads have to this newer, younger crowd, like especially when like Dead and Company came into the picture?
I'd imagine it could be a similar feeling. I mean, um yeah, I don't know, but I guess just like the structure and like the music for which that experience is like bringing together, like, multi kind of generational, I think is very different than than what we're talking about,
No, it's similar. It's
uh
yeah, yeah. No,
like,
tonally very similar. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, tonally, yeah, 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 sonically, yeah,
Right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that those harder bands had an imprint on your music at all, or was it that you kind of just strayed away from that and left it where it was and moved forward into
I mean,
The Neil Young era, if you will?
I'm so happy that I had it because, like, I don't know, it's like that music matched way more of the emotion, your first, I don't know, feeling, whatever. I don't know, just it just matched the emotions, I think, more so of that moment that you were experiencing. And I don't know, it's really good to just play like play hard and bang on bang on shit, so I don't know, I'm really glad I had the experience. Like, I don't think I could ever, be in bands like that again, but I really admire people who still, carry that torch and can, like, and if you're playing that type of music at a certain level, it's like so just like physically exhausting, like every single performance too. So certainly give them a lot of credit there. But I would say for the most part, I kind of left it and use that more for like the occasional nostalgia trip, or when I'm really trying to get a good pump in at the gym. Yeah,
It serves its purpose and has
yeah,
served its
yeah,
purpose.
yeah.
So you continued on with music when you eventually moved into college.
Yeah, it was funny. I kind of found myself living with and friends with like kind of these like I went to school in Baltimore, and like the first kids I met, of course, they were like music kids, but they were still kind of tied to this kind of like louder, hardcore, punk, etc., straight edge kind of community in Baltimore. And it was cool because like I was seeing some really wild wild shows, but I knew I was doing that just because I was happy to, like, I don't know, have buddies and have something to do,
Be out and about.
But then I would say once I started forming the band, it was kind of like my first real go of being in the band. in regards to like touring and releasing music and things like that. That's when I got to experience being part of the Baltimore kind of music community. And I've said this many times, but that's the really the first kind of I feel like I learned so many things from being in that band, from working at a venue at the same time, from starting to book my own tours and booking other bands, and really just being a part of kind of like a larger community. And it was a really special time in Baltimore because it was the height of all of these bands at the very so early stages of their career. So it's Wyoke, Lower Dent, Future Islands, Animal Collective, Dan Deacon. I mean, Beach House. Like it was miraculous because you were seeing these bands that would all pretty quickly kind of, rise to a certain level of acclaim, but you were seeing them play every weekend and, in warehouses and weird places. And I don't know, that was a really exciting time for me to be watching other bands work hard and tour and see what that looked like. And it all kind of gave me a model of like kind of what to do and what not to do, I guess, and also and like where I wanted to fit in that. And then I got to, it was cool. It was like my first gig out of college was working at this venue that wound up closing because there was a horrendous business owner. But
And you left eventually, and that was not good for
the
business either when you left.
yeah, that was really what did them in. But I don't know. I just kind of got a taste of what that meant to book very large bands all the way to like much smaller acts. It was and then I was also kind of pushing my own thing, and I think that just that really kind of set me on the way for doing a lot of this stuff, um like on my own too, and feeling like I could do it on my own. And by stuff I guess I'm meaning booking, promoting, writing songs, like managing a band of six people, like all of those kind of skill sets that come along with kind of doing that yourself. I felt like I was able to do because I saw a bunch of other people doing it and could ask questions and learn from people. And yeah.
And see that it was possible. Like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, I can actually
exactly.
do
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Other people
Yeah.
are doing it, I can do it as well. What band or what were you in at this point?
It was called Secret Mountains. There was a pretty cool record label happening around then called Friends Records, and they were putting out a bunch of Baltimore stuff. And the project was more of like a psych rock, almost leaned a little like Jefferson Airplane kind of at times, like little louder, pretty dreamy, pretty psyche, like moderately heavy, but like not, so it was, I would say that was like, also tied to like my interest at that moment of just being into like stoner rock and psych folk and all of your kind of like that the whole like freak folk thing was starting to happen, meaning like your Devendra Banharts and your Vedavers and your Vashti Bunyans, or obviously they were influenced by her. But so that was kind of like where my mind and interest kind of lied at that time. So I would say that project was kind of like an extension of that moment, for me. And yeah, it was fun. I got to experience first tours, first kind of like I would say taste of like success, meaning like good press, good, I don't know, playing festivals,
Decent meals. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know about that part ever, but that part is just like so severely lacking everywhere, and it's just like the most basic shit that should be happening. I feel like it's just like fucking feed a band. Like it's not that hard.
They're hungry. and
I'll
not
say if
in
you,
like a I
no,
wanting to
just
work,
actually, yeah, just like actually hungry. We are
physically
actually,
hungry.
yeah. So, I forgot where I was heading with all of this. But yeah, so first, a lot of firsts with that project, and that project came to an end kind of abruptly after putting out our first record and being in a band for a long time. And that was another example of, I don't know if I would call it like failure or something ending, but I learned so much from that band ending because I was like mid 20s and my whole identity was wrapped up in that band. And I kind of had to answer that question of who am I without being the guy in that band, you know? So, and that was like, that was a hard moment, you know, because I was like, oh, I'm just gonna do this band forever. This is the, you know. And so when that stopped, I was like, shit, and was definitely like, I don't know, just probably like a very whiny, pouty person to be around for quite some time. But it was, but I had to learn, you know, to find worth and value through other means too, you know, not just being the guy in the band. Yeah.
When you reached the answer, were you pleasantly surprised or did it catch you off guard? Or are you still answering the question now?
Um, hmm. I mean, I think on some level you're always answering the question, but um, I think the balance of my life now kind of adds to like a more uh, I don't know. I'm able to process like more aspects of my identity, all of which have value and are important just as much as so as someone that plays music. And I think at that moment I didn't know maybe as much about myself or those other aspects. And I think I kind of had to be open to, you know, to what those were or what that looked like. So
Was it difficult to open up in that way, or do you feel like once something ends like that that you are just inevitably open?
I'm like totally cool with shit ending now. And I think it's like really good to know like when to quit something. I think it's really good to know how to walk away from something that's not working for you or that's not healthy for you. At that moment though, I didn't have any of those skills. I only had the skills of like, I want to keep being in this band, you know. And my communication skills were lacking. I was, you know, you know, I feel like on some level you can chalk it up to age, and but yeah, I would say I didn't know how to process it. And you know, it's also like looking back, I think I used to kind of get frustrated about that moment, or maybe how I handled it, or what was my, you know, involvement in that. And I think like, I don't know, just made, you know, gotta kind of make peace with all that kind of stuff. And like I said, I really just look back on that band as being the like the first kind of go and first go of something not working out. And I've had, you know, and like other versions of that too that then didn't carry the same weight, you know. And it's because I think I understood like my own value or value systems, or kind of like, you know, I don't know, maybe just I think it kind of just tied to confidence too. I don't think I necessarily had too much of that then either. So yeah,
And now it's through the roof, 100%,
it's really taken off.
all the way up
Yeah,
there. I like it. You said that with
uh,
confidence. Just you said that with that.
all ego, all the time.
That's showbiz, you know? What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
What was the next musical project that you found yourself in after that?
it was a it was a duo in Brooklyn. So finished school, that project ends. I'm in New York. I mean, it's funny. when you live in my experience was like if you lived in Baltimore for a bit and you're thinking about the next thing, you kind of are like Philly, DC, or you skip those and you're just like just go right for the big one, you know. And so I had a lot of reasons to be pulled towards New York. Family. I was seeing my now wife at the time that was already living there, so there was a lot of things pulling me
That's
that
important.
direct.
I'm gonna tell you that's pretty important. That's kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
understand why you move that way. Let
um,
me ask you this. So do
yeah.
you feel like it's more of a transition to Philly or DC, or at that time at least? What would you wager the ratio was of if somebody was gonna take that next step, not to New York, but
I
between
kind of
those both of those
Yeah,
rather?
I kind of feel like I had equal amounts of friends doing the Philly or New York thing, probably less doing the DC thing, and maybe that was just because you're like, Baltimore, DC, they kind of just could lump that in together or something anyway. DC felt even more, I don't know, specific, or you were gonna live there for very specific types of reasons or jobs, maybe.
Right.
Um, So I would say it was pretty split, and I remember kind of being torn between the two because I had so many close friends, and in bands in Philly, and always had such a good time in Philly. So yeah, I would say it was pretty split, and for me, like I said, I just had a lot of things pulling me to New York, and I'm so grateful for that experience too. And after a while of being there, yeah, I was in this duo that looking back again, it was short lived. We had some quick, moderate kind of success and played some cool shows, and um, the music's all right, and just kind of lost. It was hard once I knew I was moving out to Portland, and so it's just kind of hard to keep things going, and
Was really
also
hoping you're
just
gonna say Philly, just real quick, Jeff. I really hope you're
and
like,
then
I was gonna do 6 months Philly, 6 months Washington, DC.
um,
But things happen
and
for a
then
reason. Yeah.
exactly. Um, so yeah, that was another project that kind of also ended. Um, that I think because I had that experience previously of I think I really even further was starting to understand like what I brought to the table in regards to like songwriting and promoting and booking and all of that. And so like I think at that moment in time I was feeling more confident that I could take those skill sets to a new place. But moving out west, was also meant moving to a place where I had significantly less community, to start from. So
Yeah.
that was the difference there.
Was that that band that you were previously mentioning? Am I saying this right? If this is the right band, a lot is riding on this one question. Is it was that Nassau or Ness?
Nassau.
Okay,
It was just
pretty close. Pretty close.
you were close. It was just yeah, it was the subway stop lived off of in
It,
Brooklyn. So
it's a Californian accent. That's why that it sounded a little bit weird there. I apologize for that.
can we edit that
No,
or
no, this is the end of the year. This everything comes in. This is the blooper reel. Did you move to Portland right after leaving the East Coast?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So it was like Jersey, Baltimore, Brooklyn, Portland.
What was that like for you making that? It's a pretty big move. Um, and what was it that stuck out to you about Portland?
I think there reached a certain point in time that I think we were just hitting our limit in Brooklyn. So I think naturally you hit a limit living in a place like New York. We were at that point. I think anytime we traveled, considering what's next, we did like a Seattle and Portland trip. at that moment, Portland was the victor of those two cities. My wife had a really close friend that was out in Portland, and I don't know, Pacific Northwest summers are very special, and that's when we first saw it. And I think if you come here in the summer, it's like a very easy decision to be like, oh yeah, this is what it'll be like all the time, you know.
The PNWSs, yes, of
Yep,
course.
yep.
Yep.
So
Famed.
and neither of us had jobs that were so specifically New York or LA. I'm a teacher, she's an illustrator and also a teacher. So that also kind of opened up just the possibility of where we might land. But we do love it. I feel like our quality of life overall has continued to, I don't know, steady growth, steady increase, since being here. Very grateful to, have been able to like buy our first home. And so yeah, we do love it here, and would be lying if we didn't say it came with its fair share of issues. But
As every
that's city
location does.
that's
Yeah.
city living. That's city living. So
That's city living.
but
So Salem
yeah,
is
so
next. Salem.
oh my
Yeah.
God, Salem is so strange. Capital cities, man. But
We're gonna name them all the big cities of Oregon
yeah,
here.
let's just start here. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, but coming here is also tied to the start of me playing and recording under my own name, and once again kind of starting from scratch a little bit in regards to that. And have been, pleasantly surprised at how um, welcome and supported I felt, by the kind of, I don't know, Portland music community at large. And I would say part of that, I think, is because it was just felt way less competitive than New York. Um, so yeah, I felt like between all of my experiences and I felt like I was in a position to be able to get started a little quicker. I understood how to like enter a new scene or a new space, and book a show, or that kind of stuff. But that being said, really didn't know many people, and so also, yeah, just a lot of new.
Which is good. That's nice.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, it was nice.
so I mean, you never felt like, oh, this is gonna be a whole nother thing I'm gonna have to trudge through to get to where I once was or am comfortable in.
I think it was more so just that, like, that first band I was in, the Baltimore and then this duo, I think I was just like still holding on to there's my dog. To
I
this
didn't.
belief.
No, I didn't know that you lived on a ranch. This was not mentioned before.
um like uh I think I was still holding on to a little bit of the belief that I needed other people to find like success or to write a song. And I think one of the first things that I did when I moved out here was this artist residency out on the coast, near Astoria, and you kind of got to live inside of this vintage Ford motorhome that they turned into this little like recording studio. It was so cool. And I was already touring around with some ideas, but I finished a set of songs. I performed my first like solo set in over 10 years or something. It was terrifying. It was awful, but that experience doing that residency and then playing that show, I was like, well, can't be worse than that. So I kind of just decided to keep going. And so that very first EP that I put out in 2019 is very much just me and the drum machine. And then, kind of gradually built from there, adding bass and the steel guitar, but then still utilizing the drum machine. And then, record I put out this year, kind of entered more full band territory with my buddy Dana playing drums. And I think now that I love that it's kind of been like a steady growth, to that point. And now it's kind of cool because I can mess around with the format if I want to. It doesn't always have to be the same thing. But I think for obvious reasons after the pandemic, any chance to get together with good people and communicate through music is, much, much, much rather prefer that than being by myself, playing a show. So
Before moving and making that transition to initially working solo, did they
yeah,
ever enter your mind before, like, I could see myself doing that, or did it just sort of happen one day?
what it was is that I never had much confidence as a vocalist, nor was I ever the person with a microphone in any of the previous projects. I was only the kind of songwriter, guitar player. So that put a whole new element in front of me. And I would say still a work in progress of learning to like really, love and appreciate my voice. But I think I've found ways for me to utilize it effectively and that feel good for me. And so that to me is the thing that when I play a show or people, listen to the record and I say that that's an aspect of it that they really are drawn to and enjoy, that's still something that really kind of takes me back because that's the thing that I didn't see myself as was the person with the microphone, and that also just comes with a lot of added weight of being even more so like in the driver's seat at a live performance of like you gotta be the person to also provide the entertainment between the songs, and
That's a
that's a whole
that's a real another whole skill right there.
and that's a whole nother skill. And I think it's kind of this weird part of being a musician that all of a sudden you kind of sometimes you can feel like you have to be like a comedian, to keep people, I don't know, happy or engaged. And you're like, no, I'm here to play songs. I'm not here to like tell you jokes, Like I understand wanting to like connect with an audience, but so but yeah, ultimately I don't think I had it in my mind that I could do it or would want to. But once I kind of just took that leap, um and started to not be so precious or negative about my voice, I think I started to maybe hear things a little differently. So I think a big part of it was that. And I think that I've made, let's see, I just finished the past four releases, so two full lengths and two EPs that I've made. I've all recorded with a close friend of mine named Ryan Oxford, who has a studio in town called Color Therapy. And it is really through that friendship and that partnership that I have been able to find comfort in my voice because I think he's been able to like explain to me how to use it and, just provided a lot of great, feedback and guidance and allowed me to be less fearful about that. So and even just beyond the vocals part, just about how I see my songs or where they can head. And so I think that's just another version of the importance of just having somebody in your corner. So I've really made a wonderful friendship slash creative collaboration with Ryan. And that's just been a really huge part of my growth, I would say, as a songwriter. And just lucky, just someone I can just pop on down the road, and start messing around. So yeah, he gets it. He really gets it.
Was it with him in that studio that it the it clicked that you're like, okay, the voice is not an issue?
I think it
or
was.
I'm past that,
Yeah, because like the
barrier.
very first, yeah, no, I think because like the very first EP was in 2019 that I recorded with somebody else, and you know that one is still the sound of like me figuring that out, and so yeah, I would say it absolutely was in the studio making my first full length album. You Become the Mountain would be the one where I think that part started to click a little bit more, and again, there are a lot of my releases kind of balance instrumental songs with vocal songs. But I would say that maybe that number now is starting to increase, or the number of songs that I feel like I would want to add vocals to is increasing because of that kind of newfound comfort or confidence that I found in that arena.
It's a classic Philly Washington kind of scenario there,
Yeah, exactly.
and everybody knows about that. Uh, did you feel like that first EP was a good jumping off point to set the tone for what you wanted to do, or did you feel like you finally got there with the first full release of an album?
It was a nice starting point, and my buddy Patrick that releases music under North Americans, which is like him and my buddy Barry Walker that lives here on pedal steel, and Barry's. I've just learned so much through getting to play music and be around Barry too. But he had a record label in LA called Driftless Recordings, and I really and had released like a ambient pedal steel record of Barry's on that label. And so I don't know, the fact that like Patrick, who was someone I admired, both as musician and label owner, was interested. I think also just like, yeah, I think it really did set like a nice starting point for me. And yeah, like I don't listen to much of my own music, but when I do hear those songs, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally understand where things were heading. And I think connecting with Ryan, Barry, and Alex, who's been my bass player on everything, just really started to solidify a sound. And I'm yeah proud of what we've been able to do together, and um, feel really proud of the one we put out this year. And uh, I'm really just kind of stoked on looking ahead and what's next.
What you spoke on earlier, that this there's been an evolution with your solo project here. Did you when did it become apparent that you wanted to start adding more things and fleshing it out more, if you will? When did that, or does it become apparent as you are writing these new releases, or does it just sort of come down like, oh, I guess I was doing something differently with this new one?
I mean, over the past, I would say 6+ years, just became enamored with the pedal steel guitar, which is now kind of seems like it's like almost harder to find a band that doesn't have it now. It's just at least for the world of music that I kind of sit in, it's become a very it's been beautiful to watch like the resurgence of interest in that instrument, and the way that that instrument is now used across genre, not just lump hold. That's a gross thing to say. Pigeonhole. What is the word? Yeah,
I like
pigeonhole. Oh
I
yeah, lump
prefer I
holds.
prefer Lumpold. I think that's a good one. I think that's
Oh my
gonna
god,
be,
I feel gross just saying that.
but it's
But
got a zing to it, and it stays with you, and that's what kind of the vernacular that I'm looking for on this podcast. Yeah, please
yeah,
continue.
you
The
can
lump
you
hole.
can run. Yeah, you can run with lump hole.
That's in the lexicon. That's, yeah.
Yeah, with that instrument being used, not just in country music. So once I realized, hey, Barry's has released music on the same label as me, and he lives in Portland, I was a really natural connection there. I had actually watched the band early living here that did steel bass guitar and drum machine, and I had never thought, I'm like, oh, you can just not have a drummer and just do that. Like, I was also becoming really interested in drum machines, so like that was kind of like just like a big clicking moment of like that arrangement is something that is very pleasing to me. And so I think that is where the jump off for You Become the Mountain happens. Then I think you have my parallel interest in like ambient and instrumental music and more just like ethereal, meditative, blah, blah, blah sounds, in addition to really loving, classic country music and the beauty of wit and lyricism and playing in country music. And that's kind of where my interests, I think, continue to overlap. Thus, I think sometimes getting put in this whole like cosmic country, camp of newer artists. And I think I think, every release you want to push yourself and build off of what you did and see if there's ways to tie previous releases together. And I was just so lucky that Dana Bowie, who is plays drums on my latest record, Western Sky Music, and there's a neighbor and a really close friend. Dana played in a band that really changed my life, called Akron Family, and that was a band that I really looked up to and admired for a long, long time. Like they were kind of like, to be honest, they were kind of like, they were out there for kind of jamming as an indie band. I could kind of jam a little bit. That was like jam wasn't cool for a really long time, and now I think it's kind of like come back around, and or it's like infiltrated indie music in a way that I think is really interesting. But they were an early example of that for me, of like you could have these tight songs, you could expand, you could get wild, you can play with dynamics, and try would travel to see this band, and now he's the drummer with me, and it's really just a special thing. And
That must be a really trippy feeling.
it is, and
Yeah.
his ear for, as someone that also writes his own music and composes for film and television, and his taste in playing and knowledge mixed with my bass player's ear for mastering, mixing, and like all these guys have so much that they're bringing to the table, and it's like really, I'm always just blown away that they like my songs, and like I'm like sometimes I'm just like, wait, really, but it's working, and when something's working, it's like you kind of just gotta roll with it. So I would say that the some of the shows and tours we've gotten to do this year, it's been cool because we're pretty locked in and getting to really, we know these songs well, and we're getting to like experience what it means to just kind of like get loose up there, and kind of like expand and see what happens and play with form and dynamics a little bit more. And that's been so exciting because like that's where you figure out songs, that's where you get good as a band, is live. So it's been really exciting to get to travel and share those moments with those guys over the past year. And um pedal steel being my obsession, I've gotten to tour with and play with a bunch of different pedal steel players who, because that's the lead instrument in my music, they all just get to bring themselves to the table, and like I'm not saying it has to be this way. And so um, it's been so exciting to see what I've had. A lot of different formations of this band this year too, in regards to tours. Like Alex and Dana are consistent, but I've also toured West Coast or East Coast in the UK with different people and different players, and that's really exciting to me too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very interesting.
yeah.
even that aspect to play, like, hey, we'll have this person on and this person on,
Yeah.
and maybe some that more than others.
It's really just like I think it's really just every time there's a new formation or even just a new pedal steel player, it shows, oh, that song could be something totally different, or we could change just that a little bit and make it its own thing. And that's exciting. That keeps things fresh. That keeps you wanting to keep going. So a lot of times, we don't always have too much time to rehearse. So like, I'll be pretty locked into having learned it a certain way or recorded it a certain way, and then we'll rehearse. And like I said, even just one new player will take it somewhere totally else. And I'm like, oh damn! Like I at first maybe sometimes there's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, and then we do it again, and I'm like, oh, now I love this. And again, my songs are open ended enough where I really, when new people are coming on board, there's like a few moments where I'm like, I would like you to be locked into this part, but beyond that, I'm really just asking people to bring themselves. And because I feel more comfortable again with my voice, with my playing, with the song, with these songs in general, and because I'm playing with such talented musicians, like I'm not nearly as like that would have been so stressful to me a long time ago to like constantly be showing songs to new people, or like all of a sudden things changing. And now I kind of just roll with it, and that's the fun part. So yeah.
Do you look back on other previous situations and you're like, oh, I wish that this was my attitude towards this in this situation, and it would have been better? Or
you
sometimes
know
sometimes things happen the way that they're supposed to happen?
I think I just again I think I'm just like, I talk about this a lot. I used to be someone that if we were like working on the song or getting ready and we hit like a mess up, I'd want to like, let's start the song over again. And now I think I'm just like, finish the song, play it through, and then you can kind of regroup and take it from there. And I think even just like small mind set shifts can really impact how you are approaching other people and communicating with others through your music. And so now I just like, there's something to be learned through the mess ups. And I also just I like when music isn't perfect. I like hearing that on recordings. So I also think there's just danger in like over rehearsing and not leaving a little bit of room for magic of live shows. So um I do think it took me a long time to get there. And part of that, again, I want to give myself credit, as someone that's just kept going and dug in. And a lot of it is just time and experience and having done it over and over and over again. Different people, different venues, different audiences, very small crowds, large crowds. Like I think I've just had enough experience now where I can step into that and know that like it's gonna, whatever happens will, it'll be something. And and hopefully it's cool, and if it's not, the next one will be. Or
We obviously know a lot of people that are like that within music, and I mean just within life in general, that it's just where it happens.
yeah.
Is that, do you feel like that's something that is only learned through time, or do you think some people are more prone to have that position uh within them in general?
Hmm. I think I used to, well, I don't know if I have the answer to that. I think what I know is that I used to feel, because I didn't have um, like a music background, meaning like that I can tell you exactly the notes I'm playing or the chords that I'm always playing. that was like a bad thing or would prevent me from being able to like communicate to other musicians, kind of what I want. But now I kind of realize that like that's kind of like a strength of mine, is having to communicate in a different way. And so I guess ultimately, I suppose what I'm saying is I think it's tied to communication and being able to be and communicate like your vision as a musician or an artist, whether or not you have, oh, this is, you got to nail the whatever C# augmented blah 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 part. Yeah.
You touched on something a little bit ago of the cosmic cowboy or cosmic country, and I've seen that term being associated with you a lot. Uh, do you did you embrace that initially, or was it something that you just kind of fell into, that this is just a new term that was, I mean, and I don't even know if it's a new term, but I feel like I see that more often with a lot more artists.
I think, I think the word cosmic on some level is just like a synonym, or it replaces psychedelic now, or psych sometimes now.
I think that's a good assessment.
And I don't mind the tag at all, because I do think if you're like in this universe, you kind of like have a certain understanding of what that means, and perhaps sometimes it's overuse or not accurate use or something. And there's way bigger things to like be concerned yourself with, and but I do think when you tell people, if people ask and you're like, oh, I make cosmic country music, I don't know, I think it at least makes people have to like stop and think, well, what does that mean? And I think having to stop and like envision that for yourself is pretty cool, rather than, but yeah, it's certainly not a new term, but one that I'm happy to roll with for now. I just never ever ever thought that, more like less the cosmic part, that I would ever just be told that I was making country music. That to me is still probably the part that feels more like outlandish to me, because like, I don't know, maybe on some level I am, but I think part of that is just, you got a pedal steel player in your group, you're like, oh, country music.
Ah, Waylon Jennings.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I know this song.
yeah.
Has the way that you define your tone in your songs and the music that you make currently, has that changed over from 2019 to now in 2023?
Like how I would explain what I do to others,
Exactly. Like, yeah,
or
if somebody asks you, oh, what kind of music do you make?
I mean, I don't know. I guess the closest thing that maybe the first EP and maybe You Become the Mountain, like maybe it leaned a little more towards like the ambient folk kind of, you know, a little more relaxed, what have you. And then I can certainly understand why, when you see us live now and things are a little more, rocking and upbeat and grooving, and that's kind of where we're headed. That like the cosmic country kind of thing makes sense and is, I don't know, it's the closest thing that I have right now that I feel confident and comfortable just saying. Yeah, that's what it is. So
Confident, cosmic, and country. Understood.
triple C's.
Triple C's.
Yeah,
We kind of mentioned this a little bit as well. Western Sky Music, which is the most recent album, and that was this year's release, correct?
correct. Yeah, came out in May.
Good deal. And at the day that we're recording this right now, I've seen some people add it to their favorite releases of this year, I believe.
Um,
Big day, big day.
Huge day. Yeah, I mean that stuff feels wonderful. Lists are funny, but would be lying if I didn't say that stuff feels good, especially like just given how quickly, album release cycles kind of happen. And I think a lot of artists can feel, even after 1 week of their album being out, you can kind of feel like, oh, I guess that's it. So when it can be perhaps re-enter people's minds in that way, or when you hear that it landed with them enough to put it in that category for them, yeah, it feels wonderful.
Do you feel like it's more of, I guess that's it, or do you feel like more people are like, I'm glad that's out and on to the next thing?
um it just it can just feel really anticlimactic, and that like if you're not someone that like wants to spend like all of your waking time on social media, that like you're the kind of like shelf life of your album kind of gets
Deteriorated.
shrunken, or yeah, or like maybe I don't know, it's not always like a real feeling, because I think music reaches the right people, and but I think just because of like how we process everything now, it can feel like I don't know, there was some tweet the other day that's like before the album it's like some initial excitement, like the first day you get a bunch of like way to goes, the next day after your album comes out there's like some like kind of slower trickle in, like, oh, cool new release, and then like you know a week later it's forgotten about, but then like 50 years later it's like, oh, that was a classic. So it can, I don't know, it can feel that way, but you gotta not let that stuff get in your way. If you focus too much on that, you're just gonna get sucked into all the thought cycles that lead you in non-productive places. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's not gonna happen with this album because we're talking about it right now.
Let's go.
We're cooking it back up.
Yeah.
I read on your Bandcamp that in this is a quote, you were channeling the natural beauty of your adopted Pacific Northwest into guitar-driven explorations of inner landscapes. That is a direct quote.
um,
I liked it. I wrote it down so I could remember it. And what I wanted to ask you about that was, is this a person that location has been like a muse for you within music, or has it always been a background kind of inspiration?
I think early living here at first, I think I was, doing that residency, meeting people, experiencing what nature was, available to me here. Like all of that, I do think aligned with where I was at as a person and had a pretty significant impact on me. And I would say that I'm sure on some subconscious level it still continues to do, but I would say maybe less than when I first made the move to Portland.
What I say earlier, the PNWS, it stays
Yes.
with you. I
Yeah.
believe that's what I said. Apologies
Yeah,
if I didn't.
it's a mindset.
Can you go back and check that real quick, Jeffrey? I just want to make sure that I have that correct. Yeah, because yeah, just whenever you get a second.
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
Second full release, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like every release from the two EPs, two full lengths, right?
Yes.
Do you view them differently from each other?
I've started to view EPs as opportunities for experimentation and to signify growth and change. And the LP is just a personal framework to try to be And I mean, again, sometimes it literally is just like, I mean, there's no rules anymore, and people can have a 6 song LP or call that an EP. It doesn't. It's all up to whatever you want to do. But like, I think I'm trying to view EPs more as those transition moments, as a stepping stone towards something, and an LP as perhaps a little bit more fully formed artistic expression.
That seems like a great kind of trajectory path, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, so far, I mean, I've been kind of bouncing back and forth, right? EPLP, EPLP. That's fun to say, and and I like that. Something about that cadence of releases has felt nice to me, and the next thing I've got in store is another EP. So I
Thank
continue to
God.
follow the path. It would have
I
been
was
really
re-
weird
I,
if I
I was stressing. I was like, I fucking because
I
it,
wouldn't
it
do that to you. I would not do that to you.
it's been a roller coaster. Through the track listing of this most recent record, there is a theme, the theme from Western Sky Music. When did that come into effect? When did you decide, all right, I want to incorporate this into the album?
I think part of that was like I like titles for things that like have the thing included. So like calling the album like Western Sky Music. Well, like of course it's music, it's a record like or like I don't know. It's another reason why I think calling the band is great, because it's like, oh, of course
You can only do that once,
uh
though. That can only be done once, and it was done really early on.
um and then I think having like a theme from something, I think tied like a little bit more to, there's like that and more in like, Western kind of movies and things like that. Or I like so I don't know. I just thought it was interesting when that song came together, that was maybe kind of just like a little bit of a centerpiece of mood and texture. And so I think that's why I was like, yeah, let's make that the so-called theme, the I don't know if it was I don't know, like a sitcom or something, maybe that would be the intro tune.
That's the new Seinfeld theme.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Was the title already in the zeitgeist?
I think I already have the title for the album in mind, and I think for me, titles or an album title can really help to start, or even a song title sometimes, but specifically an album title can like answer the question of like, do these songs fit together? Is there cohesion? Are they saying something similar, or too different, too similar? And can kind of help bring, I think, your focus, or your, like I said, your vision for a project kind of to the forefront. And so I think once I had that, it was helpful, because I think that could provide a little bit of like a, yeah, foundation or launch pad for some of the other songs, that like, okay, that one, maybe that one is feeling a little left of center right now, but can we bring it into the Western Sky Music universe?
I like it. Also, there is a video out on YouTube for that, and the animation is by Mark Neely, and I was so stoked to see that. He's a fantastic artist. I'm gonna link that below. Definitely go check that out.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Mark is amazing, and I was blown away with that one.
Do you feel like every location, including Baltimore, New York, Philly, Washington, do all of these places have a sonic soundscape behind them? Uh, or is it just certain places like the Pacific Northwest, for example?
Uh yeah, I mean, I think there's, I don't know, I think cities have their own energy, and I mean, just like all places do, but I do think it comes more from person and the person's connection to that place or lack thereof than it just comes directly from just because you are in said place that creates a specific sound. But yeah, you do have, I don't know, I think everyone has kind of like their own immediate associations with what type of music comes from certain places, or and sometimes those are accurate, and other times you're like, oh, you're actually missing an entire subset of people or sound that actually does exist there, but you wouldn't know that because you just know about that place from the internet, or
Is it possible for the sound of a location to change over time?
I think so. I mean, like, I get the sense that like the kind of, I don't know, maybe more stereotypical version of like gentle folk music that maybe Portland kind of became known for, perhaps along with the advent of your Portlandia and so on and so forth. Like, I think that I think a lot of that has been shed, and I think there's just like a lot more room for all sorts of music this here, or at least like I, through being here, and understand that there are many other undercurrents of music other than that. Plenty of quiet folk music to go around. Don't get me wrong. But there's um like wonderful, you know, scenes for most things too.
Is there a specific song that stands out to you from the Western Sky Music album?
There's a song um on the record called Clear Cut that I just think is has some really exciting playing. And I think really kind of like pushed my guitar playing a little bit, and orchestration and things like that. And so I think that's kind of, it's on like the second half of the record. And yeah, that one I always come back to is, we actually haven't really tried that one live, but would like to. So that one's been on my mind a bunch. And then, it's also the first record where I got to bring on some really cool kind of collaborators, people, outside of my maybe immediate circle, like the song Chet, William Tyler, is on that team, and a buddy of mine, Karima Walker, who's a wonderful musician in Arizona. She is the vocal that you hear on the last song. So it was also nice for me to have an opportunity to welcome some kind of special guests, if you will.
Featuring, leaving some songs for a featuring.
Feature, yeah.
Feature. Uh, has making your own music changed the way that you have gone on to listen to music?
Absolutely. I think it's really easy to like just have a really critical ear, and I try to like rid myself of that, and I think I've just become more accepting of the fact that there is an audience for everyone, even if it's something that you find to be like, horrendous. There really is an audience for it, and I guess my stance is just anyone making an attempt to put themselves out there in any way is beautiful and hard and scary, and so I try to keep that in mind even when I'm listening to something that doesn't land for me, to again kind of step out of that, like, oh well, should have done this, or why doesn't, or yeah.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me. I'm so glad we were able to do this, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for being the last guest on this podcast this year. I appreciate you
Yeah,
closing out with me. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. No, happy to round out the year. Like I said, appreciate what you're doing, and
I appreciate
I
you saying
know,
that. Thank you.
and I know, like, I don't think people also probably always understand time lift for you, as the person actually doing this. So I just I thanks.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
But before I let you go, I got to do some
sure.
promo here.
Yeah, let's
So
do it.
Jeffrey Silverstein's music streaming everywhere, wherever you get your music, that's where you could find it, right? You're everywhere,
Everywhere.
all over the East Coast, doesn't matter, and everywhere in between.
Yes.
The newest album, like we are just talking about, Western Sky Music, is through Arrowhawk Records, and you can purchase the album through arrowhawkrecords.com, as well as the first full length that we briefly touched on. In when you're gonna come back, that's just gonna be it. We're just gonna devote all the time to that.
Got you.
Yeah, the first full length, You Become the Mountain, is also there for purchase, so go pick those up. And you could find Jeffrey's other the releases, the other two EPs, along with the merch at his Bandcamp, which is at jeffreysilverstein.bandcamp.com. And you can stay up to date with releases, shows, tours, and everything else by following him on Instagram at Jeffrey, and that's JEFFREEE on Instagram. You're a busy guy. You got a lot of stuff to promote. Did we miss anything?
You nailed it. Yeah, no, more new music on the way in 2024. Hopefully, some more shows and tours. So, yeah, appreciate you. Appreciate anyone listening to my tunes, and yeah, I hope we can do this again at some point.
Yes. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you to everybody
Yeah.
who listens, and we'll see you next year.